All right, welcome. This video is going to walk through some problems, not all of the ones that are on the quiz, but four of them, the four of the most commonly missed quiz problems and their solutions, and then I will tell you which number they're similar to, excuse me, so that when you're going through, you can easily relate them. So the first one that we're going to do is we're going to solve by factoring. And we're going to solve by factoring 3x squared plus 5x minus 2. Okay, and this is like number 2 on your quiz. Okay, so the first thing you look for when you're factoring is a GCF, and if you're noticing here, we don't have a greatest common factor, and so that's when we break it down into a skeleton. Okay, and we know that we have to have a 3x and an x here because that's the only way to get to 3x squared. And then we know over here that we got to get to 2. Okay, so excuse me, we have to decide, do we want to put a 2 here or a 2 here? We know that one has to be positive and one has to be negative. And so the correct factoring that works out here is a -1 and a +2. And if you didn't know that, you could guess and check until you found it correctly. Okay. Then because we're solving, we have to set each one of them equal to 0. And so then we are left with 3x is equal to 1 and x is equal to 1/3. And then x equals -2 are your two answers there. Okay? So that's how you solve by factoring. The second one I'm going to do is one where we have to solve by square rooting. Okay? And this one is like number 4 on your quiz. So let's look at one that's 3 times x plus 1 squared minus 3 equals 0. Okay, now the goal is to get x by itself, so we kind of have to start undressing this x. So the first thing that we're going to do is add 3 and add 3. So 3 times x plus 1 squared equals 3. And then we're going to divide by 3, divide by 3. So x plus 1 squared equals 1. Sorry, you can't see. Then we're going to square root. So we're left with x plus 1 equals plus or minus, and then the square root of 1 is just 1. So now we're going to split it up to be x plus 1 equals 1, and x plus 1 equals -1. And then we can solve, so -1 minus 1, x is equal to 0, and -1 minus 1, x is equal to -2. Okay? That is how you do number 4 on your quiz. Okay? The third problem I'm going to do is solve by completing the square. Okay? And this is like number 6 on your quiz. Okay? So number 6 looks something like x squared minus 6x minus 12 equals 0. Okay? And the first step in completing the square is to get rid of a c value that's already there and put it on the other side. So if we add 12 to both sides, we get x squared minus 6x equals 12. Okay? And then we have to find the c value. So I take the c is going to be the b divided by 2 squared. So the b value here is -6. And -6 divided by 2 is -3. And -3 squared is 9. It's a excuse me. It's a +9. A lot of you guys tried to put the negative value of that, and that's where you went wrong. Okay, so understand that the c value is always going to be positive. So we have x squared minus 6x plus 9 equals, and then 12 plus 9. So we weighted on both sides. And then we can factor this to be x minus 3 and x minus 3. And that's going to be 21. So this side simplifies to x minus 3 squared equals 21. And then we square root. So we're left with x minus 3 equals plus or minus the square root of 21. So now we can split it up to be x minus 3 equals the square root of 21, and x minus 3 equals negative square root of 21. And then we add 3 to both sides. So the final answer here is x is equal to the square root of 21 plus 3, and x equals negative square root 21 plus 3. Those are your two answers there. Okay. Excuse me. So that's how you do number 6. Okay. The last one I'm going to do is another one completing the square. So number 4, we're going to solve by completing the square. This is like, I think this is like number 7 on your quiz. Okay. And so it looks something like 3x squared plus 6x equals 4. Okay, now this one's a little bit different because when you're completing the square, the a value must be 1. Okay, so in order for our a value to be 1 here, we need to factor out that a value of 3. So you're left with 3x squared plus 2x equals 4. A lot of you guys went wrong there. You did one of two things. You either completely ignored that 2 that was out in front, or you didn't divide this b value by that GCF. Okay, so be very careful with that. Now we can find a c value. Okay, so the c value is the b value divided by 2 squared. And the b value here is 2. So 2 divided by 2 is 1, and 1 squared is 1. Okay, so the c value that we add here is 1. However, if you notice, excuse me, when you come over here, you didn't just add 1, you added 3. So this is a circumstance in which you would have to add 3 to both sides. So now we're left with 3 times, and then that factors to x plus 1 times x plus 1, and that's equal to 7. Okay? And then you're left with 3 times x plus 1 squared is equal to 7. Then you have to square root, or no, sorry, you got to divide by 3 first. Divide by 3, divide by 3. So now you're left with x plus 1 squared equals 7 over 3. And so we square root, and this gets a little fuzzy. Because now we've got x plus 1 equals plus, excuse me, or minus. And then the old dead guy said, well, that's the square root of 7 divided by the square root of 3. But I'm here to tell you that you can't have a radical in the denominator. So you multiply by the square root of 3 on the top and bottom, and you're left with x plus 1 equals plus or minus the square root of 21 divided by 3. And then you subtract 1, subtract 1. So x equals plus or minus the square root of 21 divided by 3 minus 1. That's how you leave your answer. Okay, that one you might need a little bit more of my assistance on, and that's okay, but guys, you got to ask for it. The majority of you, I feel like, are not doing well on your quizzes and your tests because you're not asking questions. You're not going above and beyond. Okay, this chapter is difficult, and so you're going to need to take the initiative to step up and ask some more questions. If you could not teach your friend how to do this entire quiz, then you don't know it well enough. Okay, so think about that and let me know what I can do for you. Okay.